We're gonna be talking about foam crafting on a budget. Just a little bit of an asterisk on the side. Foam crafting is a little bit expensive just to initially get started, but once you have all the initial supplies and whatnot, it is fairly cheap going forward. So, just a little bit about myself. My name is Annie, also known as Yub Yub Commander. I have been cosplaying since 2011. I have been crafting specifically with foam since 2018, and I have been competitively crafting since 2022. I mainly specialize in fabrication and foam work. I will sew when like a gun is pointed to my head, but otherwise I try and stay away from a sewing machine and it stays away from me. I am 75% foam and about 20% contact cement and 5% cat fur for my entire being. And then just a little bit of like, I have won several awards both with foam and sewing, so just so that you know, I kind of know what I'm talking about a little bit. So, what is EVA foam? The fancy word is ethylene vinyl acetate, but essentially it is just floor mats similar to the kind that are used in like kindergarten classes as padding or automotive shops for underneath your vehicles. It can be heated, it can be cut, glued, and molded using a variety of different tools, which we will get into. It comes in a variety of thicknesses, especially when you're doing anything with cosplay. There is a clay variety that is an air dry clay. It is very toxic to breathe in, so please be very careful whenever you're using foam, as both the dust and the fume can be bad for your lungs. Please don't be like me, wear a mask or do it outside. And there are differences in the foam, which is your cheap foam, which is the stuff that's used commercially by, say, automotive shops, and then you have your official cosplay foam that is made exclusively for cosplayers. We'll get into that in a second. So, your cosplay foam, it tends to be a little bit more expensive in cost. It is usually higher quality. It is what is known as high density foam. It's usually available in many sizes, shapes, and thicknesses. You can purchase it off Amazon at places like Hobby Lobby and Michaels, but you can also purchase it from specialty shops. Floor mats, which is what I tend to use, are very cheap, relatively speaking. Requires more work to clean up and make it look presentable. It's available in fewer sizes, but it can be purchased from Amazon or Home Depot, and it is typically, I think, fairly good to use. I'm biased. So, my personal little hot take on this. Is it worth it? My pink armor, as you can see there, was made using fully floor mats. Like, that's it. And then the one that's currently in progress is a mixture of high density cosplay foam and low density foam. It's just like regular floor mats. If you are competing at an international level, you should probably use the fancy stuff. If you are making cosplay just for funsies, you don't care, or you are like beginning crafting and stuff like that, use the cheap stuff. It's not worth paying the money to buy like the really expensive stuff. You can make the cheap stuff work. I'm going to show you how to make it work, but like legitimately the majority of my high density foam project, all of those bevels and all of those details are all low density foam. Like I'm just using floor mats that I got from Home Depot for all of that detailing. Okay, so how to make cheap foam work. This is my personal opinion. It's what works for me. I like to take the floor mats, and they have like this rigid back that's like really thick. If you Dremel the back of that down with like a belt sander or a Dremel, and you just get rid of it, it works the exact same way as regular foam. I like to use high grit drums and belts. I usually use about 1,000 grit on all of it. I know a lot of cosplayers, they're like, you don't need to use that. If you're using low density foam, please use 1,000 grit, because otherwise it's gonna rough it up really bad and it's gonna tear it. If you can patch the holes in the seams really well with either quick seal or foam clay, you're never gonna have any issues. You can also layer pieces on top of one another. So like with my Alphonse cosplay right here, you can kind of see, bless you. A lot of these pieces are like layered on top of one another. If you do it in such a way where you're covering the seam lines, you will never see the seams and no one needs to know what you're using. And then textured painting, either by stippling or using other techniques, can actually just make it look totally different, which is really nice. Okay, so where to buy cheap foam? These are my main places to go. For 2mm, which is your skinniest type of foam, this is essentially craft foam that's used for children. You can go to craft stores like Hobby Lobby and Michael's and get it, or you can go on Amazon. I personally like to buy packs of craft foam that is specifically for kids, and I like to get the rainbow variety because it makes my life easier if I'm painting something without priming, because sometimes I'm lazy and I don't want to prime stuff. The sheets are smaller, so if you need like really, really big sheets for a large project, you're probably gonna have to pay for the more expensive quality stuff. But otherwise, if you're doing all your craft foam as like detailing work, which like on my helmet, I used craft foam for all of the like around the horns and stuff, you can easily get that cut out of the little tiny sheets, which I think the sheets usually go between 8 by 12 inches or 11 by 17, depending on where you get them. For 4 to 5mm, which is your base foam that you're going to be using for all of your armor, it's what you're going to be using for making all of your base shapes of your breastplates, your helmets, your masks, and everything else. I like to use this very specific roll. You can see it down in the bottom corner. It is called the Performance Tool with those numbers. Anti-fatigue grip mat roll. It is 30 square feet and it's 25 to 30 bucks. My Alphonse cosplay, this thing, I made that entire cosplay with one roll of foam from that. So this costume in general was only $70 because the majority of my money went into me buying the undershirt because I did not have a black sleeve or like long sleeve shirt and I did not have a hood. So literally the majority of the cost went into the underclothes and not the foam itself. So I highly recommend that specific foam, and you can kind of see here like those weird bumps and stuff. That's what you would be dremeling down on your foam in order to make it work better. For your 10mm foam, I like to get it from Home Depot because they usually sell this in the back near like the automotive stuff and like more of that kind of stuff. You can get it from Amazon, and you can also get it from like, if Toys R Us or anything like that exists, you can get it from those. It's usually brightly colored, and one side is perfectly flat and the other side has that textured side. They look like puzzle piece floor mats that you would assemble. They work super great. I especially love the puzzle piece ones because they come with like these strips that have the puzzle piece that you can put like on the side to make it where it's like a perfectly flush. You cut off all those little puzzle pieces and you have a perfect ready bevel that you can smooth down and put everywhere. So I really like it, and I want to say it's usually 25, 30 bucks, and I get like 6 squares like this big, and that'll last me a long time because you don't usually want to use 10mm for like all of your big armor pieces. This is more for detail. Where do you want to buy the fancy foam in case you really, really need it or you really, really want it? The Foamery, which is really great. There's the links. Cosplay Pros is another one that's really good. Foam clay is really great because you can use it to sculpt your different shapes, and it air dries. You usually have to leave it for about 24 to 48 hours depending on what you're making. You can put it in molds, you can just sit there and sculpt things, and you can Dremel it as well and use like a wood burn tool and stuff like that. So if you're going to use anything with foam clay, I do really like Cosplay Pros. You can get foam clay from like Hobby Lobby as well, and it's like, I don't know, $5 a container. It's dirt cheap, but it has a lot of holes. It's very porous and it bubbles when it's like finished drying. So what I personally would recommend, you get that and you use that to build your base shape, and then you use the nice stuff on top of it because it'll smooth out and it holds its shape a lot better. SKS Props, who is a very well-known cosplay prop and pattern maker, has their own foam clay, which is at the link given on the page. And then Lumen's Workshop also has their stuff. They have it in a variety of sizes, and they also have specialty shapes like chainmail and feathers and scales and stuff like that. So if you don't want to have to sit there and cut out individual little tiny scales for dragon armor, they make that, which is so nice. All right, so the non-negotiables for crafting. It does not matter what you're doing. If you are touching foam, you need to have these things. A mask, preferably something like literally use this if you have to, just to keep at least the dust out of your face. Don't be like me, don't breathe this in. Don't do this in your kitchen, please. A heat gun. Do not use a hairdryer. You have to use a heat gun. Please be very careful with it. Your heat gun is usually going to run you like 500 to 1,000 degrees. Don't touch it. Also, don't be like me. It's really hot. You're going to use your heat gun to shape your different pieces. And so like for my helmet that I have here, I use the heat gun to shape and warp the main part of my helmet in order for it to actually curve into this domed shape, as well as the foam that had to go around the edge. And then I will say also, because I'm lazy and I don't like waiting for contact cement to dry, I use my heat gun to dry the contact cement faster. You just gotta wait until you can see that it's like bubbly and tacky, and then you can immediately just glue your pieces together. So contact cement is what you're gonna wanna use for all of your main like foam connection stuff. And then usually like a scraper or a brush. Some people use scraps of EVA foam and they use that to like swipe the pieces together. I use the credit cards you get in the mail that you don't ever wanna hear from, like the Amazon cards and the Dish. Do you wanna join Dish? And I cut those in half and that's what I use. Contact cement, I personally like to get the big cans. Home Depot, I wanna say, uses weldwood, and that's what I like because it's not a screw on top. If it's a screw on top, that top will eventually not come off, and then you have a whole can of contact cement you can't get into. They do it like the paint can, and it's like 10 bucks, and that can will last you a very long time. You will need a Dremel or rotary tool to clean up your seams, do all your detailing, do all of your carving, clean out all your stuff. So like my horns on my helmet, these were 3 pieces of 10mm EVA foam that I slapped together. I carved it down with a box cutter, and then I Dremeled it as smooth as I could get with my rotary device. You don't need actual Dremel, like name brand stuff. That's too expensive. Just go get whatever is cheapest. I wanna say that I bought like whatever was listed as Amazon Basics, like approved one, however long ago that was, and that thing has lasted me. Like I slam it against the countertop to get all the dust out of it. Like it has gone through abuse, and it works better than my name brand Dremel. So I highly recommend that. And then definitely make sure when you buy your Dremel or your rotary tool, get extra drums. Most of the time the drums fit any of the different devices. It's just kind of like across the board the same stuff. Get a variety of them. You can use like the 60 and 80 grit Dremel drums and whatnot. And they are great for just cutting into the foam and carving it down really fast, and then you can use the higher quality stuff to like smooth everything out. You will need scissors or a box cutter to cut your foam. I will be honest, I don't cut my foam out with a box cutter. I hate it. I literally sit there with scissors and cut everything out. Unless I'm having to do something that's like an angled piece, I literally just sit there and snip around. I know some people are like, don't do that, it looks terrible. I've never noticed enough of a difference with a box cutter or a pair of scissors to make me think one is better than the other. Scissors work for me. A box cutter though, you definitely do need if you're doing any kind of carving. So again, like my horns, if you need to be able to carve something down so it makes a rounder shape, you will definitely need a box cutter for that. They're super cheap. And then get some sandpaper so that you can just sharpen your blade again. You will need primer, and then of course you're gonna need paint. And always, most of this can be found at Amazon or a local hardware store or a local craft store. So, what is primer? Now, I am lazy, and if I'm not having to make something for a competition, I don't use primer because this stuff is expensive. This used to be really cheap, and then ever since COVID happened and everything shot up, Plasti Dip especially, which is my favorite type of primer, over doubled in price, and according to people in other countries, but for a primer, before you do literally anything, you always need to heat seal with your heat gun. You will notice when you do that your foam closes and shrinks. You will notice the color of it slightly change, and that's the pores sealing up. If you do not heat seal your foam, it's going to absorb everything. It's like a sponge. So again, for this, if I had primed this, I probably would have only needed to do 2 layers of silver paint and then the black wash over it to weather it. I did 4 layers of silver paint because I didn't do any priming, but like it's acrylic, so I didn't care. Prime your foam to keep from paint waste as well. It helps with that. Primer also helps smooth out your foam so that if you have bumps and stuff, it'll help kind of smooth it out. Now, it's not a perfect device. It will not like magically seal cracks and crevices. That's why you need to have something like a sealer instead to help with that, and then you prime over that. And then of course, different types of primer equal different qualities. So what are the main things that you can use as a primer? So you've got Mod Podge, which is really cheap. It is very easily accessible. It does unfortunately crack over time. And then especially if you have any kind of armor that you're wearing that has any kind of joint where you would be bending or moving, it is going to exponentially crack. So you have to be very careful with that. Plasti Dip, which is what I personally like to use because I'm cheap, is $8 for an 11-ounce spray can. You definitely do need ventilation for this. It is very smelly, and it will stay in your house for days on end. Please don't ask me how I know. You do have to be very careful though, because it can bubble. So usually you want to put it in like a bowl of hot water and let it kind of sit for a sec, and then you can use it so it can get all the bubbles out. And do not ever go back and heat gun your armor after you've already primed it, because that will make all the primer and everything bubble up and get ruined. And then you got the fancy stuff, which is Flex Bond or Hex Flex. They're kind of similar. I don't know enough about them because they are more pricey, and I am a public librarian and I don't have that kind of money. I have friends that swear by it, and I have friends that have used it and they went straight back to Plasti Dip, and I have ones, that use Plasti and use both. So it is $40 for a 16-ounce can. It is much higher quality. It is brush on only. You do not spray it. It is allegedly a smoother surface if you apply it super lightly, and I've heard that it does work really, really well with like filling in seams a little bit better because you are brushing it on. And because it is a flexible material, when you move, it is less likely to crack your armor or your paint. Do you have any questions? I know this is like rapid fire. No? Okay. So, does paint type make a difference? Yes and no. Kind of depends on what you're working on. So, thicker or crisper paints tend to crack and crease, such as like spray paint and acrylic. Thinner paints and or flexi paints don't, and kind of only mildly crease. These are such things as airbrush and flexible paints. So just kind of an idea of this stuff. When you have creases in your foam, you can sit there and put your heat gun on low temperature after it's already been made and it's already been painted, and from a good distance you can gently heat the spots on your foam where it has creased from use, and it will slowly unwrinkle. But if you're using anything that's like a crisper paint that's gonna crack, then you can't really do that anyway because it's already starting to crack. I personally do not recommend any spray paint for your primer or for your armor in any way, shape, or form. I used to use it because when I started doing foam armor, everyone was like, prime your armor with spray paint. Like, you need to do this. Do 2 layers of spray paint on top of your primer and then you can paint it. Don't do that. It cracks so much, no matter what you put on top of it, and no matter if your primer is flexible, it will crack. And it just looks terrible over time, and then all the paint flakes off, and then you've got these weird little ridges and gaps. It looks awful. So do not use spray paint on your main parts of armor. Anything that's going to have friction, anything that's going to move slightly, don't do that. Spray paint is great for items that do not move in any way, shape, or form, like props, like 3D printed items, or Worbla armor, which I can speak on Worbla a little bit more in a minute. Acrylic is my personal choice because it is very easily accessible. It is very cheap. And then depending on where you are, you can sometimes get a little tiny bottle of acrylic paint for like 99 cents. And that makes me happy. You can also water down acrylic. I think you have to do it with like alcohol and a little bit of water. And you can actually put it in an airbrush and use that instead. Or you can just sit there and paint it on with a traditional brush, which is what I like to do. But you do have to keep in mind that the more layers of acrylic paint you add to your armor, the more likely it will crack from use over time, because it's just so much stuff on top of it. This is why your primer is really important, to make sure you don't have to do so many layers of acrylic. So good glue and bad glue. There kind of is such a thing. So what glue should I use for my armor? Contact cement. Please use your contact cement for every single seam, for every single attachment. It is so good at holding your armor together. Do not use hot glue. Like, if you have nothing else and you're just wanting to slap something together and have fun with it, use hot glue. Do whatever you want. Break all the rules. Like, it doesn't matter, because at the end of the day, it's your costume that you're making and you know what your budget is. But if you're wanting to make something that's going to look good and is going to last for a long time, use contact cement. Please, again, use a mask and be in a ventilated area. The best thing though with contact cement, it is air dry to contact. So you don't have to like do anything to magically make it work. You just let it sit there and it will become tacky, and then you just stick the pieces together and it glues together really well. Again, I like to use a heat gun and speed up the process because I don't have time to sit there for 5 minutes between every single piece that I want to attach and go, is it done? No, I want to sit there and speed it up because I have things to do and I have too much crap to make. So, the other thing with contact cement is that you can use it for attaching and stacking pieces on top of one another really well. You don't really get like a visible seam or crease. It's not like with hot glue where it like actively really visibly takes up space. Contact cement absorbs into the foam really well and then just creates a tacky surface that you can stick together. It is really hard to get pieces apart once you've glued it together, so be very, very careful, because if you try and rip that apart, you're most likely going to just rip apart your entire project and have to start from scratch. Hot glue is really great for inside reinforcements. So if you have a seam that you're looking at and you're like, ooh, if I put pressure on this, it makes the like contact cement kind of, move a bit, even after it's dried, even after you've looked at it, go on the inside of your armor and add a bunch of hot glue down that seam. It will help hold it together, so if there's any pressure, you've got that extra bit of security that it's not going to just pop apart. I like to use hot glue, especially for all of my attachments. So my zippers, my buckles, my D-rings and everything like that, I like to use hot glue. Now I will say for zippers and anything like that for my armor, I hand stitch it down onto the foam and then I hot glue down the back of it, and it literally makes it impossible to come off. I was recycling some of my armor pretty recently and like taking off a bunch of the attachments so I could reuse it. I was just having to rip the armor in half and then sit there and cut the zippers off because it refused to come off. Again though, hot glue can be very hot. You can burn yourself. Please be careful. I don't know what gods I had to pray to. My hot glue gun does not burn me. I can hot glue directly on my body because I decided to do that once because I thought it'd be fun. But just, unless you have a hot glue gun like mine, please don't ever touch yourself with it because it can burn really badly. It's really great for hidden details and flexible joints. You can also use it to attach small items, or like what I did with this helmet. I wanted to have my rivets look like they were like welded on, but really messily. I used hot glue around each of my googly eyes to give it that kind of welded, messy look. And like, it fits what I wanted, and that's all I care about, so. You can use super glue for attachments or details. You just have to be careful. It's a little bit more brittle. It usually doesn't have that give. But I will say that I have used super glue, especially when I'm working with Worbla armor, and it is insane how well it can hold depending on what brand you have. So super glue can be really great for any kind of stuff like that. It's really great for any kind of like tiny detail pieces that you want to add on. You just need a couple of dots of glue without having to deal with the messiness of contact cement or hot glue. You can use super glue for that kind of stuff, especially if you're doing anything with Worbla or 3D prints. Super glue tends to be like the best thing for a lot of that. Shameless plug. For paint stuff, if you want to get free paint, Plaid Paint, which owns Folk Art and Apple Barrel, is really, really great for all of this. And you can sign up for their ambassador program. The only thing that you have to have is an active social media account that you regularly post on. But what you can do is that if you already use their paints, you can use those pictures of older projects to get credit for their stuff. They send out a welcome gift to everyone that signs up for this, and you get like a box of free paint, and they'll slip in like, it's all your regular stuff. It's just random colors, and it's like, okay, whatever. But then they'll slip in like the fancy glazes and the metallics, and it's like, ooh, okay, so now I get to test out this paint and figure out if I want to purchase it, because some of that stuff's a little bit more expensive. They have challenges that you can do, and you have to accrue points by essentially just posting photos online that fit their challenges and whatnot. And then the more points that you have, they have like an in-app store that you can redeem your points, kind of like from a shop, and they'll put up like their new products on there. But I will say though, what's really cool is that some of their challenges just give you paint. I did one recently. They were releasing a new line of like pearlescent paint, and you just had to sign up and say, yeah, I'm gonna make something if you send this to me. And they sent me 14 cans of paint for free. And all I had to do was just post a picture and a video of me using it. So don't stress, they're not as like insane about it. They just want to know that you're using the paint and let people know that you're using the paint. But the really cool thing though with their little like in-store shop thing is that it's not always paint. They actually just recently had like a tiny Dremel, and I got that, and it's been really great for like cleaning up like tiny spots on my armor. It doesn't go super fast. That's my only complaint, is that it's like, it runs, it attempts. But since I can't afford a flex shaft for my Dremel, it works really well, and I've been able to kind of like Dremel down like little tiny areas that my larger rotary tool would like have difficulty getting into. And of course there's a reference code, and if you do that, then I get points and you get points. I know it sounds like an MLM, I promise it's not. All right, so why should you seal your foam armor? This is very important when it comes to your post-painting process. Sealing your foam helps reduce wear and tear, especially when you come in contact with different things. It creates a protective clear coat over your paint so that if you accidentally get stuck in the rain, for the most part, you're gonna be okay as long as you're not like swimming in water. And then it also adds additional elements such as a shine, matte, or semi-gloss texture to your armor, which can be really nice, especially if you're doing anything that's like metal. What can you use as sealer? You can use Mod Podge. A lot of people in different areas use this and stuff. I know a lot of like larger cosplayers way back in the day were using Mod Podge because it was like kind of the only thing that existed for a hot minute. But what they discovered is that over time, unfortunately, Mod Podge, no matter what it is covering, will yellow and crack very easily. So if you have any kind of paint job, it's gonna get that really gnarly antique look in like a couple of years' time. So I personally don't super recommend Mod Podge, but again, if you are making something for yourself just for funsies and you're not doing it for like a competition level, do whatever makes you happy. I personally use acrylic spray sealer. You can usually get like a can of this, it looks like a spray paint can, for about $4 or $5. And then you only usually need to do like 1 or 2 coats on your armor, and that's it. And that can will last you for quite some time. You can use it on your props, and you can use it like on your actual armor. But the only downside is that it does crack with stress, especially in areas with a lot of friction. So you want to use thinner coats to reduce the cracks and creases. It can be fixed with light heat gun usage, like I had mentioned previously. But the one downside with both this and varnish, which I will talk about next, is that if it's not in correct humidity, because all of this stuff gets really finicky sometimes with that, make sure you read your can. It can be sticky and it will not set right. And if you put it against anything that has paint or any kind of sealer already on it, it's gonna stick and rip apart. So you'll lose some of your finish. Varnish is like a very high quality version of the acrylic sealer. It's brush on. Like my only personal complaint with it, because I used to use it a lot, is that it is so hard to reduce drippage because it is so liquidy. It just runs down your armor. And then you'll wind up with like these little drip lines all around the base of your armor and stuff. And if it touches any kind of surface, it sticks to it really bad. And you gotta like rip it off. It's a pain. But same thing, it can be sticky and not set right if it's not in the perfect conditions in terms of temperature and humidity, which is just annoying, but this is why I usually do everything inside my house, because then it's climate controlled. Please don't be like me. But the one upside with varnish is that it is usually a thick and rubbery coating, so it protects your armor a little bit better, and it has a little bit more give, so that if you are bending over in your armor or moving and like creasing pieces, it's not usually going to crack as much. All right. So, extra goodies for crafting. These are kind of my main things that I recommend that I wish I had known about when I first started doing foam armor. I really love handheld belt sanders. This has been life-changing for me, especially when I'm working on props, and especially when I'm taking my like floor mats and I'm making them look less like floor mats. You can get a little handheld one. It's about yay big. It is heavy, so please keep in mind that you're gonna be sitting there probably for a hot minute using it. But it's like $30 on Amazon, and you can get the replacement belts fairly inexpensively on there. I like to use the lower quality belts when I'm dremeling the back of my armor down completely, because it cuts through that rubber back of the foam really, really quickly. And then I can go back over it with one quick swipe of like 1000 grit, and it is just as smooth as the other side. So highly recommend that. Sandpaper is really great to use, especially when it comes to anything with like your little, my brain died, your box cutter. I use sandpaper to just sharpen the blades. That's it. Now, if you're doing anything with 3D printing, you definitely want to have sandpaper on hand because that's going to help you smooth out all of your 3D prints. And you're going to want to have a variety of sandpaper for that. But in terms of what I use specifically with the box cutter, I tend to use a 60 to 80 grit piece of sandpaper, and I just sit there and I swipe, 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 and then my box cutter is good to go, and I don't have to replace the blade for quite some time. Hot glue gun. When I first started foam crafting, for some reason, everyone in like every video was like, don't use hot glue. Bad. And I'm like, but why? It's so cheap. It's so nice. You can use it for everything. Like, it's a running joke with my friends that if they need something attached, they come to me with the hot glue gun because it's not going to come off ever. So, hot glue gun, it's really good, it's really cheap. Go to a yard sale and get one. That's where I got mine, and that thing has not died, and it's from the 70s. So, foam clay is another really great extra goodie. I love foam clay, like I've mentioned before. It is great for any kind of molds. It is great for any kind of like thing that you're having to shape and sculpt. Again, Cosplay Pros is what I really recommend. It holds its shape really, really well. But you know, if you're wanting to get into foam clay without the pressure of spending $20 on a container, get the cheap stuff from like Hobby Lobby and Michaels. Silicone molds. Oh my God, I love these things. So silicone molds for like cakes. They have all those really pretty like filigree and fleur-de-lis designs. Those are amazing. You can just put hot glue in them, peel it off, and now you have your perfect little filigree, fleur-de-lis, whatever it is, star shape that is flexible and can go straight on your armor. And you don't have to sit there and make it yourself. You don't have to carve it. You don't have to Dremel it or do anything like that. It is there. So I highly recommend a small amount of like silicone molds for cakes. Quick seal or gap filler. Highly, highly recommend. You're going to need something to fill gaps in your armor, especially when you're first starting out, because it's going to be hard to kind of understand how do you push the foam together in just the right way to reduce gap. So you're going to want quick seal. The only thing that I've personally found with quick seal is that you have to be very careful about what type of quick seal you purchase, because some of it is water resistant, which means you cannot paint over it. Don't get that one. You're going to want a quick seal that works really well with filling areas, but is not water resistant. And then you can sit there and you're gonna have to like hand sand that down. It does not like the Dremel. It will rip and tear if it's the Dremel, but it is flexible, which is really nice. If you get the non-water resistant, you can wet your fingers, kind of like with foam clay, and smooth it out as you're putting it in the gap. And then you just sit and let that dry for like 48 hours. Gap filler is a cosplay related gap filler. You have to purchase it from the company. It's unfortunately not available in like retail stores or Amazon. If I remember correctly, it's a small little container for like 25 bucks. But I have several friends that swear by this stuff. I have not been able to use it because I'm gonna use my cheap stuff, as I've mentioned. So gap filler though is really good. It, from what I've heard, expands a bit. So after you put it in, it will expand to fill the area, and then you can sand and Dremel it down. I will also admit, I like to use foam clay to fill my gaps. It's the same material as foam, it's just sticky. So if you get your hands wet, you get a little bit of foam clay, and then you just swipe it down, and then don't touch it. Let it sit. And it will dry and fill, and then you can just go over it very gently with like the belt sander or with your Dremel drum or something, and it just completely blends it. That's what I like to use. And then of course an airbrush. I have not fully committed to the airbrush yet because money. A large airbrush, like your basic airbrush that you're probably going to want to use for most of your armor, is probably going to cost around anywhere between, I think last I checked, $85 to $120 or more for the compressor, the airbrush, and all the tools that you need. That's not even counting if you get like airbrush specific paints. Those are very expensive and can cost you like $8 to $10 for the little container. I recently got a nail airbrush that I have been told by a friend is really great for small details. You don't want to use it for like the entire piece, but if you're trying to do stuff, especially if you're doing like wig styling and you want to add more details with the roots and stuff, you can use like a nail airbrush to have more of a precise like coverage of those areas. And then especially with any kind of like smaller gradient details, it's usually better for something like that. So, do y'all have any questions, comments, plans for world domination? I know some of y'all have just gotten in here, so I didn't know if there was anything y'all wanted me to go back and cover. Do y'all have any questions about, I know I haven't really covered Worbla or 3D printing. Do y'all have any questions about anything to do with that? Because I know those are like whole different topics. Do y'all know? Yes.
Just a weird thing. When you were talking about filling gaps, have you ever tried anything like your caulk, like from Home Depot?
So that's what Quick Seal is. It's literally just caulk. But it's like a slightly more rubbery version and it's cheaper because it's not name brand. But yeah, no, it is essentially just caulk. You could probably use regular caulk. The one thing with Quick Seal is that it adheres really well to foam. I don't know how anyone found that out, or if it was one of those like, oh, I have this in my house, let me try it. But that's become like the name in cosplay gap sealers or gap fillers and stuff. But I don't see why you couldn't use caulk unless it just doesn't, I haven't tried it out. I don't know how well it dremels and smooths out. So that would be my main concern, is how well does it like actually fill that spot? If that makes sense. Do y'all want to know more about Worbla? Because I know I've mentioned it. Do y'all know what Worbla is? Okay. So Worbla is what is known as a thermoplastic. It is the alternate version for armor making when it comes to fabrication cosplays. Worbla is literally like, it looks like cookie dough, like solid sheets of cookie dough. It's very thin, it's bubbly on one side and like super textured and super smooth on the other side. Most of the time what you can use it for is that you can make like your base shape out of foam, and then you can cover it entirely with Worbla and it makes it super duper rigid, which I'm trying to see if I have any pictures of costumes I've made. Nope, I have not done Worbla stuff in a hot minute. Actually, these unicorn shoulders, in order to keep them in that shape, these are entirely Worbla. So it's covering 2mm foam, and then it's making that really rigid shape that can hold it really well in like that curved unicorn shape. It's heavy. That is the one reason I do not use Worbla for any of my main armor, is the weight. Foam is really great because it's lightweight, especially when you're doing like big breastplates and anything like that, or big armors like Mass Effect, Halo, or Warhammer. I know some people will 3D print those, and I have heard nothing but complaints because they are very heavy when you're using a more solid material. Whereas with foam, you can get away with kind of like, oh, you're not gonna see the underside, let's just leave that empty, and it's just like a half box. But the one upside with Worbla is that if you're making anything like a breastplate, especially if it's one that's like buckled on the side, where foam maybe wouldn't have the durability and strength to hold those buckles in, Worbla is really great for that. And also if you're bending and moving and stuff, you're not gonna have the same amount of creasing that you would with foam, which, let me stand up real quick and explain this. When you are in armor, especially armor that comes down to here, whether or not you realize it, you are going to be bending and moving, even if it's just a little bit, which will create a crease in that spot that will over time crack and break. So Worbla is great because no matter what, unless you like fully just like bend over and snap it, which is pretty hard to do, you're not gonna have that kind of damage, but you're still gonna have to deal with the weight of the armor on you. So that's kind of like the pro and con of it, especially when it comes to like your bracers or any kind of greaves or hip pieces, is do you want the lighter weight material that could potentially bend and snap if it's, you know, you're not careful with it, especially with the paint, or do you want the Worbla, which is more sturdy, it's not gonna bend and snap or anything like that, but it's going to be very heavy. Worbla is also very expensive. You get a roll of it, I'm trying to think about how big the rolls are. They're not too big. It's like yay amount, and it's like $70 for the whole thing. So I like to use Worbla for smaller pieces. I've used it for one full armor. It was Katniss from Mockingjay, specifically it was her Mockingjay armor. And it worked really well for something like that that needed to be super rigid. But like for my Fighter Jester armor here, or even for my World of Warcraft armor here that I'm working on, I would never make that out of Worbla. I have a friend that made, if any of y'all know World of Warcraft, Tyrande Whisperwind. She made the entire armor out of Worbla and then gave it to me because she refuses to wear it again. I wore it to DreamHack last year for like 4 hours and went, I'm never putting this on again for that long. It is so heavy. Like, oh my God. So that's kind of the spiel with Worbla. It's really great. You can get off-brand versions. I have never found an off-brand version that's good. Name brand is the way to go, but it's really great for smaller pieces. You can put it into silicone molds and use it to create really rigid details instead of using foam clay, which is very brittle, or hot glue, which is a little messy. So that's kind of that whole thing. Are we doing on time? Okay. Do y'all want to know anything more about like 3D printing, or y'all interested in that? Okay. I'm trying to see what I have on here that's 3D printed related. You can't see the picture of my cat. So 3D printing is really great, obviously. I know there are a lot of people out there that kind of snub it and they're like, oh, it's cheating. No, it's not. I work with 3D printers for my job, and I want to throw that machine out the window 95% of the time because it's evil and it hates me. And I have 3 of them in my office, and I still hate every single one, and they hate me in turn. 3D printing is incredible because it allows you to create something that would otherwise be way too complex to make out of foam or Worbla, but you can just print it, and it makes it. And it's like, it's there, and all you have to do is prime it and paint it, and boom, you're done. But then if you can't find a 3D file for it, you got to figure out how to 3D design everything yourself. And that is a massive skill because you can use that skill to take those 3D files that you make and actually convert it into a paper pattern and use that to create foam armor. So actually, my Alphonse Eldrick cosplay was a 3D statue. I found this online and I went, I don't want to figure out how to like make the armor myself. So I found a 3D model of Alphonse Eldrick and I put it into a program called Pepakura. It looks really shady when you go to download it. I promise you, it's like a totally legit program. But you put it into that and it takes the 3D model and converts it into a 2D paper pattern. It is a pain to have to assemble because what you have to do is literally make the costume out of paper, make sure it fits you, and if it doesn't, then you got to go back into Pepakura, check all the dimensions, change the sizes and stuff, and redo the whole process. This costume took me 8 months to pattern because I had to keep redoing the pattern, but it took me 4 weeks once I had the pattern to make it. But literally, I just sat there, I built the armor out of paper, I tested it out, and when it worked, I made all my seam lines, I cut my paper pattern apart, slapped it on the foam, and then went from there. It is so nice for doing that. The shoulders were Pepakura horsehead patterns that I got off Etsy that were used for like paper craft and stuff like that. It's the same thing. It's just paper files that when you fold, not quite origami folding, but like when you just fold it, it creates like an outline of a shape of a critter or whatever it is that you're trying to make. And then you can use that to turn it into a foam pattern to use for different things. So I love 3D printing. A lot of my like tiny details that I use, like on my Jester cosplay, the unicorn shoulders, like the horns on everything, all of that was 3D printed. I had a cupcake on the end of the weapon that was fully 3D printed because I wanted something that could take a beating. I like using 3D printing in my costumes for like smaller details that I just don't feel like dremeling down or I don't feel like really making, or I like using it for props because I hate dremeling swords. I can never get the angles perfectly right. And so it's really great when you can find stuff that works really, really well. If you're looking for free 3D files, you can go on Cults 3D, like the word cult with an S at the end, 3D. They sell a lot of stuff on there, but there are a ton of really high quality free files that you can download and use either for Pepakura or 3D printing yourself. Thingiverse, like Thing with an I and then verse.com is like the #1 place to go to find free 3D files. You can find anything on there, whether or not you want to. Trust me, there's something for everyone on that website. Please don't let children on there unsupervised. I had to be so careful with that because, again, I do this for work. I can't pull that website up in schools anymore because of things that have been on the front page, so just keep that in mind. But like you can find full Clone Trooper armor on there for free, already scaled to a human body that you can just download, 3D print and use, or download, put into Pepakura and create your paper file to be able to actually make it. So I really like 3D printing. I think it's a really new revolutionary way to be able to like make stuff for cosplay. There's a cosplayer, she's local to Florida. Her name is Willow Creative. She's on YouTube, Instagram, and then she has her own website. She is like on the forefront of 3D printing and cosplay. She's 3D printing with foam. She's 3D printing stuff that's like LED. It's incredible, her work. I highly recommend watching her stuff and just kind of seeing what she's doing, because she recommends a lot of really good 3D printers. But then she's also constantly testing out new 3D filaments, because like, who would have thought you can 3D print in foam? But you can now, which is really, really cool. So we are coming near the end, and I know the next group's gotta go ahead and get set up. But here's where you can find me online. If you have any questions or comments, you can always find me here. I will be posting the video of this entire thing online on my YouTube channel in case you need to go back and review it, and it will have the full slides and everything on there with the links. And I will be posting the entire presentation on my Patreon that's like free for anyone to go look at, with links to most of the items that I've listed on here so that you can easily access stuff. It's not affiliate links or anything. I kind of wish I had that kind of privilege, but we haven't got there yet. But I'm mainly on Instagram, but you can find me on TikTok as well. I'm usually making dumb videos or trying to make people cry because I think it's funny. And then YouTube is mostly for my tutorial work and stuff like that. So if you're ever interested in kind of what I'm doing and little like tips and tricks and stuff, I have a lot of that on YouTube. But yeah, thank y'all so much for coming. I really do appreciate. I know this was like super early in the morning, because I'm hungry and I'm ready for lunch already, because my brain does not understand that I'm not at work, and I have not been at work since 6 a.m. So my body's like, it's lunchtime. But anyway, thank you guys.